7 days later. Morning. West Ford e-commerce HQ. Calvin Trent hurried toward his office, taking quick, aggressive bites of a breakfast bagel as he navigated the hallway. Morning, Mr. Trent. Good morning, sir. You're in early today, boss. Staff members greeted him left and right. Calvin nodded and offered quick, muffled smiles in return, his pace never slackening. Sir, here's your itinerary for today. His executive assistant, Jenna, caught up with him, matching his stride. Calvin finished the last of his bagel in 2 seconds flat, wiped his hands on a napkin, and snatched the folder. He scanned the document. The morning was blocked out for a high-level West Ford Group Management Summit. The afternoon was packed with a regional vendor recruitment conference for the e-commerce platform, followed by back-to-back meetings with several corporate partners. It was a brutal schedule. Calvin thought for a moment. Cancel my appearance at the vendor conference this afternoon. Have a VP of Business Development cover for me. This morning's summit is critical, and once it's over, I'll need time to restructure our internal workflow. Jenna looked surprised. Sir, are you sure? The vendor conference is the big launch we've been prepping for months. You were the one who insisted on a personal touch with the electronic suppliers. Calvin smiled. Jenna, today's board meeting changes everything. Besides, Jason Quinn can handle the vendors. Most of the heavy hitters have already signed their intent letters anyway. It doesn't matter if I'm there to shake hands or not. Jenna blinked, then quickly recovered. Understood. I'll notify Mr. Quinn immediately. Wait, is Jason attending the management summit this morning? Calvin nodded. Yeah, he's relatively new, but his rank is high enough. He'll be there. I was worried about dumping the afternoon work on him, Jenna admitted. But if you say so, I'll pass it along. Go on. I need to double-check my report before Ethan sees it, Calvin said, waving her off with a grin. Calvin retreated into his office, powered up his PC, and leaned back with a latte, scanning his monitor. A moment later, there was a sharp knock at the door. Come in, Calvin said without looking up. Busy as usual, Calvin. Hope I'm not interrupting the flow. Huh. A middle-aged man in a crisp white dress shirt and slacks walked in. He wore rimless glasses and had the polished, scholarly look of an Ivy League academic. Calvin looked up and smiled. Jason, come on in. Just doing a final pass on the quarterly report. This was Jason Quinn, the recently hired fourth-in-command at West Ford e-commerce, specifically brought on as the VP of B2B vendor relations. He was a high-level headhunt from the group's HR department, a Stanford MBA and a former rising star at Amazon Seattle headquarters, where he'd managed their burgeoning media and book distribution channels. Amazon had been founded in '94 and, by 2001, was just beginning its aggressive expansion beyond books into other categories. Jason had seen the writing on the wall for the future of the internet, but he'd also seen the meteoric rise of West Ford. When recruiters reached out, the two parties hit it off instantly. Jason jumped ship and moved back to Chicago. He was one of the few parachuted executives within the group, having only been on the job for 3 months. However, his experience with mature Western business models had already pushed West Ford's vendor recruitment ahead of schedule. He had quickly become Calvin's right-hand man. Jason sat down and hesitated before asking, Calvin, I just got a note from Jenna. Are you really skipping the vendor summit? A lot of those guys were looking forward to meeting the man behind the curtain. Calvin chuckled. You'll do fine, Jason. Trust me, the meeting this morning. It's the one that matters. Jason's confusion deepened. Isn't the management summit usually just a high-level strategy review? Why is today so special that you're ditching a major launch? Jason, what's on the agenda? Can you give me a hint? Jason asked curiously. The notice from the CEO's office had been marked with a high-level security clearance. Only Tier 32 executives and above were read into the specifics beforehand. Jason was currently at Tier 28. He wasn't quite there yet. In his 3 months, he hadn't seen this level of secrecy. What's the rush? You'll find out in an hour, Calvin teased. Jason gave a forced laugh. The suspense is killing me, Calvin. It's like a persistent itch I can't scratch. Calvin paused, then leaned in with a small smile. Look, since you're going to be in the room anyway, I'll give you a crumb. Today, we're talking about a massive corporate reorganization. Jason's eyes widened. A reorganization? Already? No wonder the secrecy. Usually, when a giant like West Ford restructured, it was a bloodbath or a massive pivot. Calvin looked mysterious. Just wait. Don't ask me more. Ethan will make the formal announcement. Jason's anticipation surged. West Ford was the fastest-growing company he'd ever seen, and they'd done it all without a dime of third-party VC funding. They'd only been around for a little over a year. How could they be reorganizing already? And into what? Suddenly, the desk phone rang. Calvin picked it up. Calvin Trent speaking. Ethan's here? Good. I'm on my way up. Calvin hung up, grabbed his leather-bound folder, and stood with a sharp professional focus. Jason, the boss has arrived. Let's head to the 32nd floor. Right behind you, Jason replied, standing up. The two left the office and joined the cluster of other West Ford e-commerce executives heading for the elevators. When Calvin led his team into the 32nd floor lobby, most of the other subsidiary heads were already there. Dozens of people were mingling and talking in hushed, expectant tones. Tank Turner and Henry Payne were already waiting by the double doors. Tank, Henry, Calvin smiled, stepping forward to shake hands. Morning, gentlemen, the other VPs echoed, bowing slightly in respect. Tank and Henry were the founding fathers of the West Ford Group. Despite their youth, they carried immense weight within the company. Their results spoke louder than any resume. Hey, Calvin, your team is getting huge. Pretty soon, you're going to have more bodies than my logistics division, Tank joked. West Ford's e-commerce wing was moving at breakneck speed, mostly because Ethan Ford was obsessed with it, funneling every available resource into that subsidiary. Hardly, Calvin demurred. With the new West Ford Logistics Park breaking ground, you've got plenty of work on your plate. I'm going to be leaning on you for help, Tank. As Calvin chatted familiarly with the founders, Jason Quinn stood to the side. He wasn't on buddy terms with them yet, so he listened quietly, nodding occasionally. A moment later, the chime of the private elevator rang out. The CEO is here, someone whispered. The lobby fell into a disciplined silence. Calvin and the others stepped aside, forming an impromptu gauntlet of respect. The doors slid open. Ethan Ford stepped out, dressed in a sharp black Italian-cut suit. He moved with a relaxed, confident stride, followed by a phalanx of assistants and secretaries from the office of the president. Ethan appeared at the center of the group, looking every bit the gravitational center of the company. Good morning, Ethan. Morning, boss. The executives bowed their heads as he passed. Good morning, Mr. Ford, Jason Quinn said, his eyes fixed on Ethan. Watching that young, calm, incredibly self-assured face, Jason couldn't help but feel a pang of awe. Who would have thought that a man running one of the most powerful groups in the Midwest was barely out of his teens? Jason hadn't seen Ethan Ford many times, but every encounter left a deeper mark. It was as if beneath Ethan's youthful exterior lay the soul of a titan who had spent decades navigating the treacherous waters of global trade. He was mature, confident, and possessed a gravity that commanded instinctive respect. Jason watched him approach step by step. Suddenly, Ethan stopped right in front of him and smiled. Mr. Quinn, this is your first all-hands executive summit, isn't it? Jason straightened up immediately. Yes, Mr. Ford, it is. You look a little tense, Ethan noted with a chuckle. Don't worry, you'll get used to the rhythm of things soon enough. Yes, sir. Thank you, Jason replied. He could hear the underlying message. Ethan expected him to be around for the long haul. It was a subtle cultural shift from the Silicon Valley firms Jason was used to. In the West, things were often blunt and transactional. But here, the higher the rank, the more the leader used subtext and vision to build loyalty. Jason had struggled with it at first, but after working under Calvin Trent, he was starting to decode the nuances of the West Ford way. As Ethan led the way into the massive conference room, the executives filed in behind him. Ethan took his seat at the head of the long mahogany table. Tank, Henry, Calvin, Ross Lawton, Fiona Hart, and Leo Zhang, the core inner circle, sat to his immediate left and right. Below them sat the VPs and Tier 28 executives from every subsidiary, including the top brass from Arctic Systems like Zach Bell, Zane King, and Danny. Every eye in the room was locked on Ethan, waiting for the spark. Ethan looked around the room, leaned into the microphone, and smiled. Today's summit is different from our usual strategy reviews. The decisions we make today will define the trajectory of West Ford for the next 50 years. This is about re-engineering our DNA. We're talking about a total internal restructuring. I have already consulted with Henry, Tank, Ross, and the rest of the board. We have reached a unanimous consensus. Ethan paused, his expression turning solemn. Today's meeting serves one primary purpose. The West Ford Group is officially being reorganized. We are forming the West Ford Capital Group. A ripple of shock went through the room. Jason Quinn's jaw nearly hit the table. West Ford Capital Group? That sounded like a pivot toward a mature, international financial conglomerate. Was Ethan moving from tech and logistics into high finance? Ethan watched their reactions and smiled. This is a top-down architecture I designed myself. Let's take a look at the handouts. The assistants from the CEO's office moved through the room, dealing out leather-bound documents. Jason snatched his and flipped it open. His eyes nearly popped out. The diagram on the first page looked hauntingly familiar. It was structured almost exactly like the BlackRock or Blackstone Group models. He saw dotted lines for West Ford Private Equity and West Ford Bank. He was stunned. Was Ethan Ford moving into banking? No. Look further down. Manufacturing. West Ford Semiconductors. It was insane. Absolute madness. Jason felt a surge of adrenaline. This kid wasn't just building a company. He was building a sovereign economic entity. The ambition was staggering. Ethan spoke up again. As you can see, the new West Ford Capital Group will serve as the powerhouse that fuels all our operations. It is our core financial engine. West Ford Capital will operate as our primary investment platform. In the near future, we will establish the West Ford Fund and West Ford Bank to attract global capital and control the upstream of our financial flow. That capital will then be funneled through the group to our specific subsidiaries and West Ford Ventures. We will have the resources to drop into any project, anywhere, and accelerate growth at 10 times our current speed. Beyond our own ecosystem, West Ford Capital will focus on aggressive investments in American biopharmaceuticals, the core internet backbone, and high-end manufacturing. Ethan leaned forward, each word heavy with intent. Because my goal is to facilitate a total upgrade of our domestic supply chain. I want to ensure that in the coming years, no foreign power or rival corporation can put a chokehold on this country's key technological sectors. The executives sat in stunned silence. Jason Quinn realized that this reorganization wasn't just about profit. It was a strategic fortress. Ethan tapped the table for emphasis. Listen to me. I am forming West Ford Capital not as private wealth and not as a payout for a few individuals. This is American industrial capital. Since the day we started, West Ford has had a unique mission. Our heart hasn't changed. We use technology to benefit society, and we use capital to serve the nation's future. That rule is etched in stone. Ethan's voice rang through the hall like a clarion call. A moment later, the room erupted into thunderous, rhythmic applause. Every person in that room looked at Ethan Ford with a sense of genuine reverence. Jason Quinn's heart was pounding. At that moment, he finally understood the difference between West Ford and the Silicon Valley giants he'd left behind. He understood why the benefits were so generous and the salaries were double the industry standard. This was a company with a soul, a company that actually stood for something. Ethan pulled out another document. I will now announce the restructuring of our leadership under the West Ford Capital Group. 1. West Ford Tech, Arctic Systems, West Ford Electronics, West Ford E-Commerce, West Ford Logistics, and our new apparel and trade division will be consolidated into the Internet and E-Commerce Business Group. I am appointing Wayne Tank Turner as the executive director. Tank stood up and gave a sharp, proud nod to the room. 2. The Anchor Point Shipyard is being elevated to the West Ford Marine Group. The former shipyard manager, Mark Young, will serve as executive president. Mark Young, a silver-haired veteran in his 50s, stood up with a beaming smile and bowed. 3. We are establishing West Ford Entertainment, which will merge with West Ford Gaming to form the Gaming and Media Business Group. Henry Payne will serve as the executive director. Henry stood, his face solemn and professional. 4. We are launching West Ford Semiconductor. Uriah West, our senior specialist from the State Institute, will serve as president. Uriah West stood up, his hands shaking slightly with excitement. He could hardly believe that following his former student would lead him to the pinnacle of American industry. 5. Upon securing the necessary licenses, we will establish the West Ford Fund and West Ford Bank. These, alongside West Ford Ventures, will form the Finance Business Group. Fiona Hart, our current CFO, will serve as the executive director. Fiona Hart, her hair pulled back in a sharp bun, stood and acknowledged the room. 6. West Ford Capital Group will be the holding entity for the group, the bank, the fund, the ventures, and West Ford Mining. We are establishing a board of directors consisting of our core executives. I, Ethan Ford, will serve as chairman of the board. 7. We are establishing West Ford Legal. Ross Lawton will serve as president of the firm while continuing his role as general counsel for the group. Ross Lawton stood, a subtle, confident smile playing on his lips. Ethan set the papers down. That is the new architecture. We are finished here. The entire executive tier stood as one. The applause was deafening, vibrating the very windows of the 32nd floor. Jason Quinn clapped until his hands were sore, his blood boiling with excitement. He stared at Ethan Ford, his eyes gleaming. This massive ship was about to set sail into the future, and Ethan was at the helm. One day, Jason thought the name West Ford will be heard in every corner of the world. 3 days later, the gates of Illinois Institute of Technology. The golden afternoon sun spilled over the campus entrance. Students carrying backpacks and rolling suitcases swarmed toward the curb to catch buses, while parents in SUVs and on motorcycles waited to pick up their kids for the summer break. Grace, where's Ethan? I don't see him anywhere, and I have no idea where Tank disappeared to, either. Chloe Jones stood on her tiptoes, scanning the crowd. Grace Miller checked her watch and gave a helpless laugh. Who knows what that idiot is up to? The road in front of the gate was a snarled mess of traffic. Cars were crawling forward inches at a time, and a few campus security guards were trying to direct the chaos. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, Chloe guessed. Is our campus belle waiting for a ride? My car is right there if you want to hop in. A smug, high-pitched voice came from behind them. Grace turned around. Joe Zimmerman? This was the rich kid who tried to join the drama club, just to chase Grace a few months back. He was the same guy who used to compete with Jason York in the local social scene. Do I have the honor of giving you a lift? Joe asked, his eyes roaming over Grace with a greasy smile. Grace rolled her eyes. Sorry, Joe. You don't have the honor. My boyfriend is already on his way. A flicker of annoyance crossed Joe's face. What's so great about that Ford guy anyway? Grace set her suitcase down and cracked her knuckles. If you know what's good for you, you'll beat it. I don't have time for your nonsense. Chloe blinked, then gave silent thumbs up. Go get him, Grace, she whispered. Joe's jaw tightened. This girl was the toughest, most stubborn beauty he'd ever met. He literally had no move that worked on her. Suddenly, a heavy hand dropped onto Joe's shoulder. Who the hell are you? Joe turned around irritably, only to find himself staring at a cold-eyed, massive wall of a man. The guy was tall, built like a linebacker, and had a lethal aura that suggested he'd seen things no civilian should see. Joe's voice immediately dropped an octave. Hey, man. Who are you? Duke Drake stared at him, his voice like grinding gravel. Move. It wasn't a suggestion. Joe, sensing the danger and having no idea who this guy was, didn't dare talk back. This man looked like he'd crawled out of a war zone. Yeah, okay, sure. Joe gave a forced laugh, nodded frantically, and scrambled away. Grace looked at Duke, surprised. Duke? Where's Ethan? Duke nodded respectfully. Miss Miller, mister. Ford's car is stuck in the gridlock behind us. The scene is a bit of a mess, and for safety reasons, he asked me to come get you and walk you to the car. Wait, what mess? What's going on? Grace asked, looking confused. Was the traffic really that bad? Duke gave a helpless grin. You'll see when you get there. Let me take those for you. Duke grabbed both their suitcases as if they weighed nothing and led them back toward the side street. After walking for about 10 minutes, Grace saw a massive crowd gathered on the sidewalk. There were people everywhere, including a few local news crews and people snapping photos with digital cameras. The crowd had completely choked the sidewalk and part of the main road. What is this? Why are there so many people? Grace asked. Well, they're looking at the car, Duke sighed. Miss Miller, Chloe, stay right behind me. Duke used the suitcases like a snowplow, physically carving a path through the throng. When Grace finally reached the front of the crowd, she saw what everyone was staring at. It was a motorcade. 5 black Autos, 3 Lincoln Town cars, and at the head of the line, a massive silver beast of a sedan with a winged bee hood ornament that looked like it cost more than most people's houses. A perimeter of men in black suits and earpieces stood around the cars, keeping the curious onlookers at a distance. Chloe gasped. Oh my God, is that a Bentley? No wonder. No wonder it's a riot out here. She'd seen it in car magazines. It was the pinnacle of luxury, a Bentley Arnage. There probably weren't 5 of them in the entire state of Illinois. Miss Miller, Chloe, this way please. 3 of the security guards stepped forward to shield Grace, gesturing for her to get in. Wait, Grace was in a daze. This was Ethan's car? My God, this thing has to cost what, $100,000? Under the gaze of hundreds of whispering students, Grace lowered her head and hurried to the lead car. Chloe was led to one of the Autos behind it. When Grace slipped into the buttery leather interior, she found a grinning Ethan Ford waiting for her. Ethan, what the hell are you doing? Grace hissed at him. Ethan shrugged. I thought I'd pick you up in a new ride. How was I supposed to know it would draw a crowd? He'd underestimated the curiosity people had for top-tier luxury in 2001. Most people were still driving Fords and Hondas. A Bentley parked on a college campus was like a UFO landing. Grace ran her hand over the seat. It was incredibly soft and smooth. Ethan, how much did this cost? Ethan smiled. It wasn't that expensive. Liar. Is this $100,000 car? Grace guessed. Ethan coughed into his hand. Ahem. Add a zero, and you're closer. Wait, what? Add a zero. Grace's eyes went wide as saucers. Million? She stammered, the number feeling heavy on her tongue. Ethan thought about it. With the import taxes and the custom interior? Yeah, about that. Grace was stunned. She knew Ethan was doing well with his company, but she'd never asked him for a balance sheet. She just knew they were making money. But this was insane. Who spent $1 million on a car? That's like a lifetime supply of tacos. You could literally eat steak every night for 100 years. She didn't even have a conceptual grasp of that many zeros. She sat in a daze for a long time before finally reaching over and pinching the skin on Ethan's side. Ow! Hey, what was that for? Ethan yelped in pain. Grace glared at him, hands on her hips. You spent $1 million on a car? Just to pick me up? Ethan looked offended. What's the problem? Besides, this is a corporate car for the group's VIP guests. It's an investment. Grace, listen to yourself. Is that even English? $1 million car isn't expensive? Ethan, how much money have you actually made? Are you losing your mind? Ethan grinned. Honestly, I haven't made that much. Just a few small goals. Grace blinked. What's a small goal? Ethan leaned into her ear and whispered a number. Grace heard the figure, and her jaw literally hit her chest. Grace was completely floored. She had never even heard a number that big in a personal context. It was more than a bank account. It was a sovereign wealth fund. How much money was that, really? In her mind, you could spend it for 10 lifetimes and still have change. Ethan, that much? For real. Grace turned to him, her eyes wide with shock. Ethan shrugged. Is it a lot? It doesn't feel like a lot. It's not enough. Not by a long shot. Grace reached out and pinched him again. Listen to yourself. Not enough. How big is your ego? People need to know when to be satisfied. Ethan winced. I haven't even touched my real goals yet. This is just the gas money I need to get there. Grace paused, remembering what Ethan had said long ago, his dream of revitalizing American industry. She softened and smiled. Fine. Then go make more. Make so much you finally feel like you can stop. Honestly, to me, there isn't much difference between a few $100 million and a few $100 billion. I can't wrap my head around either. Whatever you do, I'm with you. Ethan felt a surge of warmth. Having someone who truly understood the drive was rare. The car moved slowly through the streets, with the West Ford security detail and the black Audis keeping the traffic at bay. Grace looked out the window at the students hauling their bags. By the way, Ethan, I start my internship this summer. I told you about it, the architecture firm downtown. They're paying me $700 a month. It's actually pretty good for a junior intern. Ethan blinked. $700? Yeah, that's great. Grace glared at him. Don't grate me. You think everyone can just go out and print money like you? Ethan patted her head affectionately. As long as you're happy. But is that enough for your spending money? Grace gave him a sweet smile. It's plenty. I don't really buy much. It's more than I'll ever spend. She didn't want to be a trophy girlfriend. She had 2 good hands and a brain. She could earn her own way. She didn't care about jewelry or designer bags. A few $100 a month was more than enough for food and a few movies. So, Ethan, what's your plan for the summer? Grace asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. Ethan put an arm around her slim waist. I'm heading to New York. I want to see the skyline, walk Wall Street, and take care of some business. Do you want to come? Wait, New York. But I can't. I have to work, Grace said, her face falling with regret. Ethan teased her. So skip the internship. You're the boss's girlfriend. Grace shook her head firmly. This is a huge opportunity. I'm not blowing it, but I'll come find you as soon as I get a vacation day. The car cleared the crowd and left the Illinois Tech campus, heading toward the Old Mill residential district. As the sun began to set, the motorcade pulled up outside the neighborhood gates. Ethan and Grace got out, grabbing their bags. Grace, bye. See you for breakfast tomorrow. Chloe waved from the window of the Audi behind them. Have fun tonight. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Grace teased back with a laugh. Chloe and Tank were the type of couple that spent every available second together when they weren't working. Everyone knew what they were up to. Tank grinned. Hey, Grace, you should take care of my boy Ethan here. He's a lonely man. Ethan snorted. Tank, you seem to have a lot of energy. Maybe you want to pull an all-nighter at the warehouse tonight. No, it's done. I'm sorry. I have a date. Bye. Tank yelled as the car peeled away, leaving a cloud of dust. Ethan and Grace shared a look and laughed, holding hands as they walked toward their homes. When they entered the Miller house, the scent of a home-cooked meal hit them immediately. Mom, Dad, we're home, Grace called out. Grace! Ethan, come in, dinner's almost ready, George Miller said, appearing with a mug of coffee and a big grin. Thanks, George, Ethan replied. Ooh, something smells good. Grace kicked off her shoes and sprinted into the kitchen. Ethan set the bags down and changed into his slippers. He saw George and his father, Frank, chatting over coffee in the living room. His mother, Mary, was in the kitchen helping Lily Miller with the cooking. Grace was already in the living room, grabbing a banana and laughing at something her dad said. Watching the scene, Ethan felt a slow, stupid grin spread across his face. His parents were healthy and happy. The woman he loved was right in front of him. What else could a man possibly ask for? Son, come here. Tell me how those finals went, Frank Ford called out, waving Ethan over. Coming, Dad, Ethan answered. Lily Miller laughed from the kitchen. Wait, Ethan still has to take tests. I forgot he was a student. The house filled with the sound of collective laughter. Late that night, after Grace had showered and changed into an oversized sleep shirt, she sat at her desk, writing in her diary. June 26, 2001. Sonny, I had no idea Ethan was worth that much. I haven't even dared to dream about those kinds of numbers. My idiot boyfriend is actually a big deal. I guess I picked a winner. He's so impressive. I'm going to have to work twice as hard to keep up. Grace put her pen down and rested her chin on her hand, lost in thought. I'm not going to be some pampered housewife. If she was going to be an architect, she was going to be the best. She turned around and grabbed her stuffed pig from the bed, holding it up in front of her face. Okay, Piggy, tell me the truth. Can I be one of the top designers in the world? She manually forced the pig's head to nod. That's what I thought. You got good taste. This girl is going to do big things. I'm a modern, independent woman, right? She made the pig nod again. Good Piggy. Now, I'll go back to sleep. She tossed the stuffed toy back onto the bed with a laugh. She tried to settle her mind to do some reading, but then she heard a soft thump against her window. Grace! Grace Miller! Grace! Wife! You awake? Ethan's muffled, playful voice came from outside. Grace blinked. What was he doing up this late? She stood up, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtain. Ethan was leaning out of his bedroom window across the narrow alley, grinning like an idiot. Ethan, what? Do you have any idea how late it is? I'm trying to study, Grace said, crossing her arms. Ethan chuckled. Study later. I have good news. Grace looked suspicious. What good news? Ethan leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. My parents. They decided they wanted to see the sunrise at the lake. They left tonight for a little getaway. I already arranged a car and a driver for them. Grace blinked. Oh, that's nice. But how is that good news for me? I'm not going with them. Ethan rubbed his hands together. Hiking and sunrises aren't for young people like us. We should be doing more fun things. The good news is, my house is empty tonight. So, maybe you should. Grace's face turned bright red. Oh, you got a one-track mind. You're terrible. But, make sure you leave the back door unlocked. Late at night, Grace Miller pressed her ear to her bedroom door, listening to the sounds of the living room. When the TV finally went silent and she heard the creak of floorboards, she knew her parents were heading to bed. This was the moment. She crept to her door and opened it just a crack, peeking out. The lights were off. The house was still. Her heart was pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. Mom? Dad? She whispered into the dark hallway. No answer. She let out a long breath. She opened the door wider and began to tiptoe toward the front door, feeling like a common thief in her own home. Grace? Where are you going? The sudden voice of her mother, Lily, made Grace nearly jump out of her skin. She spun around, a guilty, forced smile plastered on her face. Oh, hey, Mom. You're still up? I couldn't sleep. I was just going to look at the moon. Yeah, the moon. Lily glanced out the window at the heavy clouds covering the sky. There's no moon out tonight, honey. You're going to see Ethan, aren't you? Being caught red-handed made Grace feel like she was about to spontaneously combust from embarrassment. She wanted to melt into the floorboards. Mom, Grace squeaked. Lily chuckled. Honey, you're an adult. You don't have to be so shy. If you want to go see Ethan, I'm not going to stop you. Really? But, wait a second. I have something for you. Grace was totally lost. What could her mom possibly need to give her right now? Lily disappeared into her bedroom and came back a moment later holding a small, blue box. She pressed it into Grace's hand with a look of maternal concern. If you guys aren't planning on having kids anytime soon, make sure you use protection. Of course, if you do end up pregnant, I wouldn't be mad. I'd actually be pretty happy. Grace's face went from red to a deep, glowing purple. Mom, what are you talking about? We're just going to talk. Lily gave her a look that said, sure you are, and smiled. Right, talking. I won't get in the way of your conversation. Go on. Oh, okay. Grace turned to leave, her head spinning, but then she stopped. Wait, Mom, why do you even have this? That's your father's. None of your business. Now, go. Lily coughed awkwardly and waved her away. Seeing Grace still hesitating, Lily took matters into her own hands. She opened the front door and gently shoved her daughter out into the night air. Click! The door locked behind her. Grace, your father and I are going to bed now. Don't come back and wake us up tonight. See you tomorrow. Lily's voice muffled as she walked away from the door. Grace stood on the porch, holding the small blue box, completely bewildered. My God, my mom is something else. Grace didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She stuffed the blue box in her pocket and hurried across the yard to Ethan's house. As she approached, she saw the back door was slightly ajar, the signal. She pushed it open, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. Ethan! She flipped on a light. From the back of the house, she heard Ethan humming an upbeat tune. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway of his bedroom. He leaned one hand against the doorframe, trying to look like a brooding movie star. My lady, he said in a deep, exaggerated voice. You finally arrived. Grace! She walked up to him, looking at his ridiculous expression. Ethan, did you hit your head? You look like you're having a muscle spasm. Ethan smoothed his hair back. It's called smoldering, Grace. Can't you feel the raw, masculine energy radiating off me? Grace turned red, but leaned in anyway, sniffing the air. I don't smell anything but your soap. No? Impossible. Fine, whatever. Tonight, you aren't escaping me. Ethan grinned and suddenly scooped her up in his arms. Ethan, put me down. Grace shrieked, though she immediately wrapped her arms tightly around his neck. Ethan ignored her and carried her into the bedroom, setting her down on the bed before pouncing like a hungry wolf. The big bad wolf has caught the rabbit. Grace's face was on fire as she curled up on the bed. No. 1 minute later. Ethan, what goes on in that head of yours? Can't you be wholesome for once? Yeah, sure, whatever you say. Ethan, I'm thinking about your health. Right. Whatever Grace says is law. Hey, Ethan, look at me. I'm a paragon of virtue. You should learn from me. Yes, ma'am. I'll learn forever. Now, can you let go of my hands? Grace had pinned both of his wrists to the mattress with one hand and was using her knee to hold his waist down, leaving him completely immobilized. She teased him with a smirk. Since you're being so well-behaved, I guess I'll let you go this once. She released him, and Ethan gasped, rubbing his wrists. Geez, Grace, where did you get that grip? Ethan winced. That's what you get for being a creep. Grace huffed, her face still flushed. Ethan grabbed her hand and gave her a wicked grin. With a girlfriend as beautiful as you, it's a miracle I'm not a bigger creep. It's your fault for being so pretty. In short, girl, you are beautiful. Grace rolled her eyes. You and your smooth talking. When are you leaving for New York? Ethan pulled her close and smiled. Day after tomorrow. Why? Are you going to miss me? Please. Miss you. In your dreams. I definitely won't. Grace chirped, her chin held high in mock defiance. Even if she was already dreading him leaving, she was too stubborn to admit out loud. I'm just asking because. If you're in New York, you better bring me back something cool. That's all. Ethan saw right through her. He pinched her nose gently. Still being stubborn. I guess I'll just have to see exactly how stubborn that mouth is. Stop it. I don't have a plan like yours. Grace argued. Ethan reached out and his hand brushed against a small object on the bed. He picked it up and looked at it. The little blue box. Carrying protection? And you say you don't have a plan? Ha ha ha. Ethan laughed triumphantly. Grace's face turned into a bright red apple. That isn't mine. I swear. Ethan leaned in, his eyes glimmering. Don't deny it. I know your heart. I know. My queen. To ensure we don't waste this beautiful night. Let's get to bed. I shall pamper you thoroughly. Ethan pulled the comforter over both of them. Ethan, that tickles. Feel the power of my forbidden pressure point technique. Ethan, you're asking for a beating. Bite me, Grace. Rawr. Ow. Where are you biting? Not so smug now, are you? That's it. I'm biting back. The comforter began to roll and heave like waves in the ocean, one after another. The next morning, the sun streamed through the window, filling the room with light. Ethan slowly blinked his eyes open and instinctively reached out to his side, but his hand hit empty space. He rubbed his eyes and realized the other side of the bed was cold. Where's Grace? Then he heard the whir of the range hood coming from the kitchen. He threw on some clothes and walked out, finding Grace busy at the stove, still wearing her oversized sleep shirt and an apron. Grace, what are you doing? Ethan asked. Oh, you're awake, she said, looking back with a smile. Can't you tell? I'm making breakfast. Breakfast? Are you trying to poison me this early in the morning? Ethan teased. What was that? Grace brandished a wooden spoon at him. I'm so moved that you're feeding me. Truly moved, Ethan said, raising his hands in surrender. Go wash up. Breakfast is almost ready. Prepare to be amazed by my skills, Grace said proudly. Ethan gave a nervous laugh. Amazed? Or hospitalized? Are you still talking? You want a bruise? Grace cracked her knuckles. Ethan bolted for the bathroom. A few minutes later, he came out fresh and dressed. Grace had already set the table. A pot of savory rice porridge and a plate of sautéed greens with garlic. Eat up. It's simple, but it's delicious, Grace said, looking very satisfied with herself. Really? Ethan sat down and inspected the food. It looked decent, not like the scorched experiments of the past. Try it. Grace handed him a bowl and a spoon. Ethan took a small, cautious sip. Wait, this is actually good. He looked up in surprise and took a larger bite. The porridge was thick, silky, and perfectly seasoned. What? Grace, did you actually make this? You didn't buy it from the diner down the street? Ethan asked, stunned. Grace reached over and gave his ear a little twist. Did you think I was too stupid to learn how to cook? I'm a straight-A student, remember? Ethan winced. Yes, ma'am. Queen Grace is the greatest. #1 in the world. That's more like it, she said, letting go. Ethan shoveled the porridge down. Why aren't you eating? I already had some. I'm not that hungry, Grace replied. Not hungry? Makes sense. I'm the one who did all the work last night. Ethan joked. Grace turned bright red and glared at him. That was your own fault. I didn't force you, Ethan whispered. Oh, really? Who was the one saying we had to finish the whole box last night? Grace's face became a crimson apple. She looked away, stammering, It definitely wasn't me. Ethan groaned, rubbing his lower back. Oof, my poor back is killing me. But since you made breakfast, I guess I can forgive you. Grace glared at him again, then reached for his waist with her devil's claws. A moment later, a howl echoed through the house. Ow. Hey, Ethan Ford, you've got 2 days left before you leave for New York. Don't think for a second you're going to have a peaceful time. 2 days later. Jersey City, transit point to New York. It was early morning, and the path station and tunnel entrances were swarming with commuters. A fleet of black luxury cars appeared on the side of the road, drawing the attention of everyone passing by. The silver Bentley in the middle was especially striking. People stopped in their tracks just to stare. The doors of the Audis behind it opened, and a dozen men in black suits stepped out, securing a perimeter. One of them opened the back door of the Bentley. A young man in a crisp white shirt stepped out. He was handsome and refined, carrying himself with an air of quiet authority. Duke Drake stepped forward and draped a black overcoat over the young man's shoulders. Who is that guy? No idea. Some billionaire's son. Man, look at that Bentley. If you aren't born in the back of one, you're never going to own one. He's so handsome, rich, and good-looking. I want to marry him. Dream on, girl. Keep walking. Ethan Ford ignored the whispers as he checked his watch. Done Drake approached. Ethan, the paperwork for the team is all set. Tank Turner hurried over from one of the other cars, looking excited. Ethan, let's move. Ethan nodded. Did Wyatt Steele get to the city yesterday? Yes, sir. He's already in Manhattan. He's laid out the itinerary as planned, Dan replied. Ethan gave a small smile. Good. Then let's go. Let's see what the Big Apple has for us. Time to meet Charles Thorpe. This way, sir, Duke said, leading the way. Under the protection of nearly 20 security personnel, Ethan moved toward the tunnel entrance like the center of a galaxy. After clearing the transit points and entering Manhattan, the motorcade moved toward the skyline. Ethan and Tank sat in the back of the Bentley, watching the skyscrapers of New York City rise up around them. The streets were a dense labyrinth of yellow cabs and rushing pedestrians. It was far busier and louder than Chicago. This was the financial capital of the world, the bridge between America and the global markets. Man, Ethan, this place is something else, Tank said, staring at the heights of the Midtown Towers. With the world's capital flowing through it, it's bound to be a zoo, Ethan said. In 2001, there's no city on Earth that can match this place. Of course, the future is always unwritten. Ethan stared at the tops of the buildings shrouded in morning mist. Everything looked calm, but he knew the currents beneath the surface were treacherous. He knew that for Wes Ford to truly plant a flag in the world of high finance, they had to conquer New York. Ring. Ring. Ethan's phone chirped. He looked at the caller ID and answered. Hello, Mr. Thorpe. Ethan, I see you've arrived in my city. You didn't think you could sneak in without a hello, did you? Charles Thorpe's voice was cold and detached on the other end. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He already knows my schedule. The man really did have eyes everywhere. Charles gave a dry, mocking chuckle. Since you're here, Ethan, Why don't you join me in the New York Harbor? If you're extending such a warm invitation, Mr. Thorpe, how could I possibly refuse? Ethan said into the phone, his voice calm, even though a chill ran down his spine. Does Charles talk to everyone like they're a subordinate? Ethan wondered. The arrogance of old money was apparently a universal constant. I'll see you at the pier, Ethan, Charles said flatly, hanging up without giving Ethan a chance to reply. Ethan set the phone down and shook his head. Charles Thorpe. Always the drama. Tank, Thorpe wants me at the pier, Ethan said. He invited you? Tank asked. Invited? Ethan laughed. No, he didn't invite me. He ordered me. Tank frowned. What an arrogant prick. That's just plain rude. Ethan smiled. In this city, there are very few people he has to be polite to. Business etiquette doesn't apply when you think you own the board. He looked toward the front. Duke, change the destination. The harbor. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and the wind was picking up off the water. A 3-story luxury yacht was moored at a private pier in the New York Harbor. Inside the main salon on the first deck, a bar was in full swing. Dozens of men in bespoke suits, labels like Armani and Brioni, mingled discussing stock options and 9-figure mergers. Waitresses in sharp uniforms moved through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres, treating the guests with practiced deference. These were the movers and shakers of New York, the heavy hitters. Then, a group of men in black suits appeared at the entrance. At their center was a man with a striking, sharp face. Mr. Thorpe is here. Charles, good to see you. It's been too long, Charles. The businessmen flocked to him, eager to offer their greetings. After all, Charles Thorpe was the head of Empire Group, one of the most powerful families in the city. Nobody wanted to be on his bad side. Charles smiled thinly, nodding to the crowd. I'm glad you could all make it to this little mixer. Enjoy the drinks. Oh, the pleasure is ours, Charles. A short, balding man gushed, practically bowing. Charles patted the man's shoulder. Mr. Miller, glad you're here. The honor is all mine, sir, the man squeaked. Carry on. I have business to attend to, Charles said, his smile disappearing as he turned away. He led his private detail toward the stairs. In his second-floor office on the yacht, Charles stripped off his suit jacket and sat behind a heavy oak desk. Warren, have we finalized the supply contracts with the retail guys? Charles asked his middle-aged assistant. Most of them are locked in, sir, Warren replied. However, there are 2 who are being difficult. Paul Packy Bennett from North Star Meats and Mark Wells from the distribution group. Richie, standing behind Charles, spat out, those 2 old bastards. They think they can hide behind their union buddies. They're looking for a reason to go under. Charles leaned back, his legs crossed, and said calmly, Warren, make sure they retire by the end of the day. Warren's eyes flickered with a cold understanding. Understood, sir. I'll handle it immediately. Charles checked his watch and smiled. Wait, I'm expecting a visitor. A very clever young man is about to arrive. As he spoke, there was a knock at the door. A security guard entered and whispered in Charles's ear. Charles gave a cold smirk. Right on time. He's here. Warren, go greet our guest. Ethan Ford. He's in New York now. He needs to learn whose pier he's standing on. New York Harbor. The fleet of black luxury cars stopped on a narrow road leading to the docks. Duke Drake got out and opened the back door. Ethan, we're here. Ethan stepped out and looked across the harbor. The deep blue of the Atlantic met the gray sky at the horizon, a vast expanse of water. To the left, the skyline of Manhattan rose like a wall of steel and glass, a monument to wealth. The view is incredible, Ethan noted. It's a different kind of world, Tank said, standing beside him, looking at the distant towers. A group of men in white shirts approached from the dock entrance. Mr. Ford? West Ford Group, the leader of the group asked in a thick Brooklyn accent. Mr. Thorpe is waiting for you on the yacht. Lead the way, Ethan said, gesturing forward. As they walked down toward the water, Ethan saw the massive yacht moored at the pier. It was surrounded by empty slips. Charles had clearly rented out the entire section of the marina just for his own privacy. The entrance to the yacht was guarded by several men in suits. Mr. Ford, space on the vessel is limited, a middle-aged security chief said, stopping Ethan. You're allowed 2 guests. What? Only 2? What kind of game is Thorpe playing? Tank frowned, clearly insulted by the restriction. Mr. Thorpe's orders, the man said coldly. Ethan narrowed his eyes. He could feel the power play. Charles was trying to assert dominance before they even shook hands. Welcome, Mr. Ford. A jovial voice rang out from the yacht's gangplank. Warren, Charles's assistant, hurried down. Ethan hadn't met the man before and looked at him with curiosity. Warren stepped forward and shook Ethan's hand warmly. Ethan, I'm Warren, Mr. Thorpe's executive assistant. I look forward to working with you. Ethan smiled politely. I should have come to New York sooner. I hope I haven't kept Charles waiting. Oh, don't worry about it. Charles knows you're a busy man. He understands. Warren looked at the 20-plus security guards Ethan had brought along and gave a small smile. Ethan, the yacht is a bit cramped for a small army. You understand the logistics. Ethan shrugged. Fina, Duke, Dan, you're with me. Everyone else, wait here. Tank, worried about Ethan's safety, whispered, Ethan, is this a good idea? Ethan patted his shoulder. With Duke and Dan behind me, I'm the safest man in New York. All right, Warren, lead the way. Warren led the way up the gangplank, with Ethan and the Drake brothers behind him. As Ethan entered the yacht, the sound of smooth jazz filled the air. He saw the wealthy elite of New York sipping high-end scotch and talking business. His arrival didn't go unnoticed. The conversations dipped as the guests looked at him. They saw Warren personally escorting Ethan, and the looks on their faces were a mix of curiosity and confusion. Who is this kid? Why is Thorpe's right-hand man treating him like royalty? Ethan ignored the stares, followed Warren to the second deck, and entered the office. Sir, Ethan Ford is here, Warren announced. Ethan looked past him. Charles Thorpe was lounging on a leather sofa, a Cuban cigar in one hand and his legs crossed. Hi, Ethan. Come in, take a seat, Charles said, not even bothering to stand up. He just gestured vaguely toward a chair. Good to see you, Charles, Ethan said with a thin smile, stepping into the room. Duke and Dan tried to follow, but the guards at the door blocked them. Ethan waved his hand, telling the Drakes to wait outside, and sat down across from Charles. Charles squinted through the cigar smoke, studying Ethan. You're a hard man to pin down, Ethan. You come to New York and don't even call? If my people hadn't spotted you, I wouldn't have been able to host you today. Oh, my apologies, Charles. I wanted to get settled before I bothered you. I wouldn't want to interrupt you while you're busy making the real money, Ethan said smoothly, his tone perfectly neutral. Charles gave a dry laugh and leaned back. He picked up a box of cigars from the table. Do you smoke cigars, Ethan? Have you ever tried one? It was a loaded question. Charles was testing his sophistication, checking to see if he was just a country kid with a lucky bank account. Ethan smiled. I've had a few. I wouldn't call myself an expert. Back in Chicago, we're mostly Parliament men. You want one, Charles? Ethan pulled a pack of Parliaments from his pocket and offered one. Charles stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Ethan, nobody in New York smokes those. If you're doing business here, you smoke cigars. Virum, the yacht's engines roared to life, and the vessel began to pull away from the dock. Charles walked to a private bar, poured 2 glasses of high-end whiskey, and handed one to Ethan. In this city, Ethan, you drink Macallan and you smoke Cubans. He handed Ethan a long, dark cigar. Try this. A genuine Cohiba. Ethan took it without hesitation. Thanks, Charles. I'm a quick study. I'm not picky. Ethan picked up the cigar cutter, clipped the end with practiced ease, and used the torch on the table to light it. His movements were fluid and professional, not a hint of a novice in sight. Charles's eyes flickered with a brief flash of surprise. Ha, good. You're full of surprises, Ethan. Drink up. The two left the office and walked out onto the observation deck at the stern. The yacht was picking up speed now, leaving the harbor behind as the skyscrapers began to shrink in the distance. Ethan, the Payne family's assets are finally sorted. I assume you're ready to get to work, Charles asked, leaning against the railing. Ethan puffed on the cigar and nodded. Of course. That's why I'm here. Empire Group's logistics routes into the interior are back in business. I'm looking forward to our partnership. Charles got the answer he wanted and let out a hearty laugh. Good. You're a man who knows how to move, Ethan. As long as you play your part, Empire Group will be the best partner you've ever had. And so will I. Ethan raised his glass. The honor is mine, Charles. They clinked glasses and took a drink. Charles set his glass down and looked at Ethan meaningfully. So, I assume you didn't come to New York just for our little logistics deal, did you? Ethan smiled. I also wanted to see the sights. I heard the streets of New York are paved with gold. I figured I'd see if I could find a few loose bricks. Charles tapped the railing. There's gold, all right, but it's hard to pick up without getting your hands dirty. He looked at Warren and gave a sharp nod. Warren nodded back and left the deck. A minute later, a group of guards dragged 2 middle-aged men onto the deck. Both of them had been beaten badly. Their faces were bruised, and blood was smeared across their shirts. Charles, please. Just one more chance. We'll do whatever you say. We'll sign the contract. Please. I don't want to die. The 2 men fell to their knees, sobbing and begging, their foreheads hitting the deck as they bowed. They were clearly terrified out of their minds. Charles remained cold, flicking his cigar ash into the ocean. Now you regret it? It's a bit late for that. These were the two difficult suppliers, Packy Bennett and Mark Wells. Warren leaned in and whispered, "How do you want to handle these two, sir?" Charles waved a hand dismissively. "Throw them overboard. Let them swim back to Brooklyn." The two men on the deck turned deathly pale. Mark Wells's legs gave out entirely, and a dark stain spread across his trousers as he lost control of his bladder. "Charles, no. Please. We were wrong. Give us another shot. Whatever you want, we'll do it. No questions asked." Wells lunged forward, trying to grab Charles's leg, but Charles kicked him away with an expression of pure disgust. Warren signaled to four of the guards. They stepped forward, hauled the two men up, and shoved them toward the railing. "No. God, Charles, no." Packy Bennett screamed, sobbing and struggling with everything he had. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. "Charles is doing this right in front of me." He realized this was a demonstration, a show of force. He's making an example of them to warn me. Charles glanced at Ethan and waved a hand casually. "Sorry about the noise, Ethan. These two are just a bit too loud for my taste. Hope you don't mind." Ethan gave a thin, cold smile. "In your harbor, Charles, why would I mind?" The response gave Charles exactly what he wanted, an acknowledgement of his territory. "I prefer a quiet conversation anyway," Charles said. As the words left his mouth, the guards heaved the two men over the side. Splash! The sound of the water hitting and the screams were cut off instantly by the roar of the yacht's wake. "Sit, Ethan," Charles said, gesturing toward a chair as if nothing had happened. To him, disposing of business rivals was no different than swatting a fly. Ethan felt the weight of the moment. New York wasn't Chicago. Here, the old families and the massive conglomerates were the law. Charles Thorpe was a shark in a tank of minnows. "You mentioned finding gold, Ethan. What kind are we talking about? Real estate? Jewelry?" Charles asked. He was probing for Ethan's real objective in the city. "Nothing so glamorous, Charles," Ethan replied honestly. "I'm just looking to set up a private equity fund. I want to use New York's position as a global financial hub to build a fundraising bridge for my companies back home." It was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. He wasn't about to lay out his entire strategy for a partner as dangerous as Charles Thorpe. "Oh, I see. Makes sense," Charles said, looking satisfied. Whether he actually believed Ethan was anyone's guess. Charles raised his glass. "Setting up a fund can be tricky, or it can be easy. If you hit any roadblocks, Ethan, you know where to find me." Ethan smiled inwardly. "You'd help me? More like you'd own me." "I appreciate that, Charles. I'm new to the city, so I'll definitely be looking to you for guidance," Ethan said, clinking his glass against Charles's. They shared a look, smiled, and drank. The yacht made a wide loop through the harbor and out toward the open water. For the rest of the trip, they didn't talk business. Instead, they discussed the local culture, the New York social scene, the Broadway galas, and the celebrities who defined the city in 2001. New York's entertainment industry was at a peak. Stars like Britney Spears and the cast of Friends were everywhere. Even someone as focused as Ethan knew who the big names were. Charles offered to introduce Ethan to a few A-list stars and upcoming gala. Ethan remained polite but distant, knowing that every gift from Charles came with a hook. By the time the yacht returned to the pier, Ethan had a much clearer picture of Charles Thorpe. The man was a born predator, a prince who had inherited a fourth of the city's power and believed the world owed him the rest. Night fell as the yacht docked. Ethan stepped off the gangplank to find Tank and the team waiting. "Ethan, you okay?" Tank asked, rushing over. Ethan laughed. "I'm fine. Did you really think he'd pull something on the boat? That's not his style. There's no profit in killing me yet." Tank scratched his head and grinned. "Glad to hear it. I still don't like the guy." Ethan patted his shoulder. "Let's go. We're done for today." "The wind's getting cold, sir," Duke said, handing Ethan his overcoat. Ethan nodded and, surrounded by a security detail, left the pier. Wyatt Steele had arranged their accommodations at the St. Regis on 55 TH Street. It was one of the most prestigious hotels in the world, a Fifth Avenue landmark that had hosted royalty and titans of industry for a century. It was the perfect base of operations, secure, elite, and world-class. The motorcade pulled up to the grand entrance, drawing stares from the tourists and shoppers on Fifth Avenue. A team of bellhops rushed forward to help, but Ethan's security team waved them off. Duke personally opened the door for Ethan. "We're here, sir." Ethan stepped out and took off his coat. "Tell the guys to stand down. Let everyone get some rest." "Yes, sir," Duke said, dispersing the team to their assigned rooms. As the crowd thinned, a man in a sharp tuxedo and gold-rimmed glasses hurried over. "Mr. Ford, I'm Mr. Harrison, the floor manager. It is a distinct honor to have you stay with us." He bowed respectfully. He knew that the young man in front of him had booked out an entire floor of the hotel, the kind of guest that demanded the highest level of service. "Please, allow me to personally handle your check-in," he said. "Thank you," Ethan said. Ethan and Tank were led to a private VIP lounge to wait. Ethan was immediately struck by the old-world luxury, the gold-leaf ceilings, the marble floors, and the museum-quality oil paintings on the walls. "Man, Ethan, look at this statue. Why doesn't it have arms?" Tank asked, looking at a marble bust in the corner. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Tank, have you never heard of the Venus de Milo?" "The what?" "Never heard of her," Tank said, shaking his head at the art. As they chatted, the sound of an argument broke out behind them. "Lillian, please. Don't be like this. Get away from me, Richie. You make me sick. Go back to your little girlfriend." "Lillian, let me explain." "Drop dead, you loser. And what are you looking at? You never saw a beautiful woman before." A woman in a short black skirt and a sharp bob haircut stormed past, shoving a middle-aged man out of her way. The man looked annoyed and started to say something, but then a slick-haired young man behind the girl gave him a lethal glare. The man recognized the youth, turned pale, and scurried away. The girl continued her rampage through the lounge, pushing past people until she ran right into Ethan. "Move!" she snapped, reaching out to shove him aside. Ethan caught her wrist in midair. "Miss, the room is plenty wide. Try using the other 6 feet of space," Ethan said calmly. Lillian Lee blinked, then glared at him. "You piece of trash. Who do you think you are? Let go of me." Richie Harmon was miserable. He'd gone out for a private dinner with a starlet, only to get caught by a paparazzo. The scandal hit the tabloids just as his girlfriend, Lillian Lee, was seeing them. Now, she was in a rage he couldn't soothe. If she were any other girl, he would have dumped her months ago. But Lillian was a Lee, the niece of Edward Lee, the patriarch of the Lee family. Their engagement was the cornerstone of a massive corporate merger. The Harmon family's firm, Harmon Financial, was in deep trouble. The tech bubble burst had decimated their liquidity, and they were desperate for a bailout from the Lee family. If this marriage fell through, Richie's father would literally skin him alive. "Let go of me, you scumbag." Lillian wrenched her hand away, glaring at the young man who had the nerve to touch her. Ethan didn't look angry. He just had a calm, slightly amused smile on his face. "Ethan, this girl's got a foul mouth," Tank muttered, looking annoyed. Lillian heard his accent and sneered. "Your whole family has a foul mouth, you Midwest beggars." "Who are you calling a beggar?" Tank shot back. Richie saw the confrontation and rushed over to play the hero. "Lillian, are you okay? Did he hurt you? Where have you been? Can't you see I'm being harassed?" "He grabbed my wrist," she snapped. "Don't worry, babe. I'll handle this," Richie said, seeing a chance to redeem himself. He turned to Ethan, looking him up and down. Ethan looked refined, but he was a total stranger in the New York scene. Probably just some rich kid from out of town, Richie thought. "Hey, do you have any idea who I am? You touched my fiancée. How do you want to settle this?" Richie said, shoving his hands into his pockets and trying to look intimidating. Ethan studied him for a moment and smiled. "I know exactly who you are. Richie Harmon, of Harmon Financial." Harmon Financial was one of the few boutique firms left in the city with a prime brokerage and investment banking license, one of Ethan's key targets. He'd done his homework before landing. He just hadn't expected New York to be small enough to run into them on day one. Richie looked surprised. "You know me? Then you should know better than to mess with me. You want to die. You people from the interior need to learn your place. This isn't Chicago." Ethan smiled. "And what do you want me to do?" Richie straightened his tie and puffed out his chest. "Apologize to my fiancée." Now, he wanted to show Lillian he was a real man. "You're delusional," Ethan said, shaking his head. What did you call me?" Richie barked. At that moment, Mr. Harrison, the floor manager, hurried over. "Mr. Ford, your keys are ready. The penthouse floor is secured. This way, please." Ethan nodded, not sparing another look at the couple. He walked past them toward the elevators. Tank followed, right behind him. Richie tried to chase after them, but Duke and Dan Drake stepped into his path. Their eyes were like ice, radiating a raw, lethal intensity. Richie took one look at them and froze. He could feel the wolf in them. You guys think you're tough? Just wait. I'll destroy you," Richie shouted at their backs as they walked away. Once they were gone, Richie turned back to Lillian. "See, Lillian? Those guys are low-class trash." Slap. Lillian delivered a stinging blow to his cheek. "You useless coward." She stormed off, leaving Richie standing in the lounge, clutching his face in shock. In the hotel's presidential suite, Tank pulled out a thick folder of research. "So, Ethan, what's the move? We going after the Harmons?" Ethan scanned the data. If the Harmons don't get a cash injection soon, they're going to have to sell that financial license. A New York financial license was worth its weight in gold. Whoever held it could bypass years of red tape to start a private bank or an investment firm. The city had stopped issuing new ones years ago. The only way in was to buy someone out. Ethan had two plans: the slow, legal route of applying for a new one, which would take years, or the fast route, buying a shell company with an existing license. Harmon Financial was sinking. It was the perfect opportunity. Ethan thought for a moment. Tank, set up a front company. Use one of our offshore entities. I want us to get in the room for that license auction, but I don't want anyone to know it's us. Especially Charles Thorpe. Empire Group is looking for a way into the banking sector, too. If Thorpe finds out we're bidding, he'll drive the price into the sun just to spite us. Tank nodded solemnly. I'm on it, Ethan. But this is New York. If Charles finds out we're playing behind his back, will there be trouble? Ethan looked out the window at the glowing lights of the city. If he wants to fight, Tank, let him. He'll find out the hard way that New York isn't the only place with sharks. 1 month later, New York City, early evening. A man wearing thick-rimmed glasses and a sharp, tailored suit stepped out of the Holland Tunnel Transit Hub, trailing a suitcase and a soul-crushing exhaustion. He looked up at the setting sun dipping behind the Manhattan skyline, his expression vacant. New York, you haven't changed a bit, have you? A black sedan pulled up to the curb a few yards away. A young man in a crisp white shirt hopped out, waving enthusiastically. Matt. Matt Thorne looked at the kid and managed a faint smile. Finn, it's been a while. How's your father doing? Same as ever, Finn Finley said with a wry, sad smile as he scratched his head. Ever since the stroke, he's been on a downward slide. Only his mouth still works, and his mind is getting fuzzier by the day. But when he heard you were coming to the city, he was genuinely thrilled. Take care of him. I know it's been hard on you, Matt said, patting Finn's shoulder. The Thorns and the Finleys had been close back in the day before Finn's family moved to the East Coast to find their fortune. Though they drifted, Matt had always made sure to send gifts during the holidays to keep the bridge intact. Don't worry about it, Matt. Come on, let's go get some dinner, Finn invited. They climbed into the car. Matt sat in the passenger seat, watching the neon blur of the city lights as they sped toward Midtown. So, what brings you to New York this time, Matt? Finn asked. Still looking for investors? Did Summit Capital decline to double down? Matt whispered, almost to himself. Everything's gone. There's nothing left to invest in. What? Finn didn't catch it. Matt turned with a forced grin. I am here for investment, but not from Summit, and not for a startup. Then who? Finn asked, curious. Matt tapped the window glass, his voice flat. The Empire Group. What? Finn nearly swerved. The Empire Group? Charles Thorpe's outfit. The next day, Empire Group headquarters. Mr. Thorne, please wait here. Mr. Thorpe will be with you shortly. Would you like some tea? A beautiful assistant in a short skirt and black stockings set a cup of Ceylon black tea in front of him. Thank you, Matt nodded. Shortly after she left, Warren, Charles Thorpe's right-hand man, walked into the lounge. Mr. Thorne, right? I'm Warren, Mr. Thorpe's assistant. Warren scrutinized Matt with a cold, predatory gaze. Nice to meet you, Matt said, shaking his hand. Warren didn't let go immediately. Mr. Thorpe says you have something critically important regarding Ethan Ford of the West Ford Group. Care to share? Matt shook his head. I report only to Mr. Thorpe. I see. A flicker of annoyance crossed Warren's face before he sat down across from Matt, crossing his legs. From what I've heard, you and Mr. Ford have a bit of a history? A little professional spat. Warren's tone was condescending. His background check showed that Matt Thorne had been ousted from Arctic Systems. To the Empire Group, a man without a company was a man without value. He assumed Matt was just another disgruntled loser looking for a handout by snitching on Ethan. You and Mr. Thorpe already know the answer to that, Matt sneered. A little spat? Ethan Ford didn't just take my company. He took my life's work. He took my dream. Without Arctic Systems, Matt felt like a ghost haunting his own life. To him, Ethan hadn't just defeated him. He had hollowed him out. I don't know the full story, Warren shrugged. If you're comfortable, I'm happy to be a listener. Matt gave a self-deprecating laugh. There's nothing to hide. Everyone in Silicon Valley knows. I might as well tell you. He took a sip of tea and began to recount the bitter rivalry between himself and Ethan Ford. Warren listened in silence. Half an hour passed. The heavy doors to the lounge swung open, interrupting Matt. Both men stood up immediately. Charles Thorpe walked in, a heavy wool overcoat draped over his shoulders, his face like a slab of granite. Mr. Thorpe, Warren bowed. Mr. Thorpe, Matt echoed. Charles walked straight up to Matt, staring him down. Is the information you sent me real? How did you get it? Are you certain? Warren looked confused. He hadn't realized Matt had bypassed him to send intel directly to the boss. Matt didn't blink under Charles's piercing gaze. It's absolute. Ethan Ford isn't someone you can trust. I know for a fact that one of his primary goals in New York is the Harmon family's Emerald Bay finance. A murderous glint flashed in Charles Thorpe's eyes. You're saying that among the companies bidding for Emerald Bay, there's a shell company for Westford. Charles was obsessed with that financial license. It was the key to expanding Empire Group's dominance in the New York market. He had to have it. If another power grabbed it, it would be a dagger at the Empire Group's throat. He had even burned his bridges with the Lee family to secure this deal. Then, Matt Thorne had sent him a tip. Ethan Ford was secretly playing for the same prize. To Charles, this felt like a betrayal. He thought he had Ethan under his thumb. Tell me, Charles growled, which shell company is his? Capital Peak Finance, Matt said, a dark smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Capital Peak? Warren's eyes widened. Damn it. I was wondering why that foreign-backed firm was being so aggressive, driving up the price and stalling the Harmons. It was Westford the whole time. Charles sat down. An assistant leaned in to light a Cuban cigar for him. He took a long drag, his eyes cold. Ethan Ford. He just can't play nice, can he? He's looking for a grave, Charles muttered. He looked at Matt. Do you have someone on the inside? Matt remained silent. Charles grunted. You came here for a deal. What do you want from me? Matt looked him in the eye. I want Arctic Systems back. Arctic Systems? Hey, you got some balls, kid. Charles Thorpe leaned back, a plume of cigar smoke trailing from his lips. If I had the power to just hand you Arctic Systems, the Westford Group wouldn't even exist anymore. Matt countered. Ethan Ford is going behind your back to buy Emerald Bay Finance. Are you really going to let him keep his seat at the table? Charles narrowed his eyes. And what if I decide to give him a pass? If you give him a pass, Matt said steadily, you're just feeding a wolf that's waiting to bite your head off. Charles threw his head back and laughed. You've got spirit. Fine. When I take the Westford Group apart, I'll give you Arctic. But from now on, you work for me. Understand? A sharp light flared in Matt's eyes. Working for the Empire Group was a dream for many. It meant instant power and wealth. But Matt shook his head. You can invest in me, Mr. Thorpe, but you won't own me. Charles's smile froze. After a moment, he nodded. Fine. Ambitious. You can go. I hope your person inside Ethan's circle can deliver when the time comes. Matt bowed slightly. They will. As Matt walked out, Charles gestured for Warren to come closer. Mr. Thorpe, set it up. Call Ethan Ford. Tell him I want to see him tonight. I need to remind him who runs this city. Night fell at the Hillside Private Club. Richie Harmon paced nervously outside the entrance, his brow furrowed into deep lines. Dad, who do you think is behind Capital Peak Finance? Richie asked his father, Arthur Harmon. Why do the Thorpes demand we meet the person behind that company tonight? And why do they insist we be there? Richie was terrified. He was afraid Charles Thorpe was going to use muscle to force the Harmons to hand over the license for pennies on the dollar. Arthur Harmon remained calm. Don't worry. If I don't want to sell, no one can steal it. Charles Thorpe is powerful, but he doesn't own the world. We still have the Lee family in our corner. Mentioning the Lees made Richie think of Lillian Lee. He was glad he'd managed to win her back, even if her personality was a nightmare. For the sake of the family, he would endure anything. Suddenly, a fleet of headlights cut through the darkness. 2 Mercedes led the way, followed by several black Autos. The procession was massive, radiating power. Is that them? The people behind Capital Peak. Richie stood still, staring. Arthur Harmon felt a prickle of unease. Anyone with this kind of motorcade in New York was a heavy hitter. A group of men in black suits climbed out. A massive man, Duke Drake, stepped forward and opened the rear door of the lead car. A young man in a crisp white shirt stepped out, looking refined and carrying an air of quiet confidence. Richie Harmon's jaw dropped. His face went pale. It's him? How is it him? Arthur looked at his son. You know him? Who is he? Richie's voice was shaky. I met him once. I know him. But Richie had insulted him. He had treated him like a nobody. But what? Who is he? Arthur pressed. As they spoke, the refined young man led his entourage toward them. Richie felt the sheer weight of the man's presence and instinctively took a step back, swallowing hard. Ethan Ford looked at him and smiled faintly. We meet again. Richie stammered. Hello, Mr. Ford. Ethan spared a brief glance for the Harmons. Surprised to see me? Richie Harmon let out a bitter, hollow laugh and nodded. He never would have guessed that the phantom outbidding everyone for his family's crown jewel was the very man he'd try to look down on. The arrogance he'd held before felt like a slap in his own face. So, You're the legendary chairman of the West Ford Group. Arthur Harmon asked, stunned. Ethan extended a hand. I am. Mr. Harmon, it's a pleasure. I hope our partnership remains smooth, regardless of outside pressures. Arthur shook his hand, though his expression was pained. He knew the West Ford Group was a juggernaut. Their shell company, Capital Peak, had been snatching up investment firms all over the city lately, throwing the market into a frenzy. But there was a problem. The Empire Group was also in the bidding war, and they didn't take losing well. Arthur was caught between two giants, and he was terrified of being crushed. Mr. Ford, Charles Thorpe is inside. Arthur whispered, his voice trembling. Ethan patted Arthur's shoulder. Don't be nervous, and don't be afraid. I'll handle it. As long as you stand with me, I'll keep you safe. Arthur blinked. He wanted to believe it, but the Empire Group had ruled New York's shadows for decades. Could Ethan Ford really shield them? He had his doubts. Mr. Ford is here. Please come in. Warren's voice interrupted them. He approached with a snide, threatening grin, measuring Ethan with his eyes. Ethan didn't even acknowledge him, walking straight into the club. Duke, Dan, and Wes Sterling followed close behind. Left in the wake, Arthur Harmon sighed. Let's go. I just hope we make it through the night. Ethan arrived at the back courtyard of the club. The walkways were lined with men in black suits, Charles's muscle. The atmosphere was stifling. In the center of the courtyard sat a large glass-walled sunroom. Ethan could see Charles Thorpe sitting alone at a tea table, his face devoid of emotion. Step inside, Mr. Ford. Your people can wait out here, Warren said, gesturing. Ethan signaled for the Drake brothers and Wes to stay put, then walked into the sunroom alone. The courtyard was dim, but the sunroom was brightly lit and filled with the scent of expensive tea. Good evening, Mr. Thorpe, Ethan said with a casual smile. Mr. Thorpe, the Harmons added, bowing low as they followed Ethan in. Sit, Charles said coldly. As they took their seats, Ethan went straight to the point. Calling us here so late, Mr. Thorpe, is there something on your mind? We're all friends here. No need for games. The Harmons turned pale. No one talked to Charles Thorpe like that. Charles had been about to pour tea. He stopped, set the pot down, and fixed Ethan with a lethal stare. Ethan, I thought we were partners. I gave you an opening, but you decided to treat me like a fool? Capital Peak Finance. Quite the appetite. I thought it was some international hedge fund. I didn't realize it was West Ford. Charles tapped the table, his voice dropping an octave. You crossed the line, Ethan. Ethan didn't flinch. I'm an investor, Mr. Thorpe. I come to New York, I buy a few companies. Is there a problem? You know this is New York, Charles growled. Do you know whose turf this is? Ethan leaned forward. I know exactly where I am. This is American soil. It's not a fiefdom for some glorified middleman. Charles's eyes flared with rage at the middleman comment. Fine. Very well. Charles looked at him like he was already dead. I'm giving you two choices, Ethan. 1. Pack up all your business and get the hell out of my city. 2. You don't leave this city alive. The Harmons were sweating through their suits. Arthur looked at Ethan, praying for a sign of retreat. He didn't want a war. But Ethan's face was cold and unyielding. Mr. Thorpe, I've always been stubborn. I don't like people giving me choices. I'll take the third path. You're asking for death. Charles slammed his teacup onto the table, shattering it. Ethan remained perfectly still. Charles turned to Arthur Harmon. Arthur, I want the Emerald Bay bidding process stopped tomorrow. Arthur stuttered. If he agreed, he'd offend Ethan. If he didn't, Charles would destroy him. Ethan placed a hand on Arthur's shoulder. Don't worry, Arthur. Business as usual. Our deal isn't going anywhere. Charles let out a dark grunt. Try me, Ethan. Don't doubt for a second what I'm capable of. If you won't be sensible, you're not walking out of here. Is that so? If you want to play, Mr. Thorpe, I'm all in. Ethan stood up and straightened his shirt. If that's all, we'll be going. Good night. Ethan turned and walked out, pausing only to gesture for Arthur to follow. The Harmons practically ran to catch up with him. Charles watched them leave, his eyes brimming with murderous intent. Ethan Ford, Arthur Harmon, since you've chosen to be my enemies, then go to hell. Warren hurried into the room. Should we let them leave, sir? Charles grabbed the teapot and smashed it against the wall. They don't get to come and go as they please. Go. Now. End them. I want the whole city to know that anyone who crosses Charles Thorpe doesn't see the sunrise. The courtyard was dim and eerily silent. Duke Drake stayed glued to Ethan's side. Ethan, something's wrong. Their men are gone, Duke whispered. We need to move. As a former special ops soldier, Duke was attuned to the silence of an ambush. Dan Drake added, Yeah, they clear the area too fast. Wes Sterling scanned the perimeter. I've alerted the guys outside. Stay sharp. Ethan nodded. Move. He looked back at the Harmons. Stay close. The moment they reached the front courtyard, the silence broke. Flashlights cut through the dark, pinning them in place. Footsteps thundered from all directions. Ethan, get down. Duke roared, drawing a combat knife from the small of his back. Get him. Kill Ford. A voice screamed from the darkness. Dozens of shadows surged forward, the blades of machetes glinting in the pale light. You bastards, Dan Drake cursed, pulling his own blade and forming a defensive perimeter around Ethan and the terrified Harmons. Richie and Arthur Harmon were shaking, paralyzed by fear. Ethan, however, remained unervingly calm. So Charles really did it. The man was as arrogant as they came. He really thought he could just erase people. Bring in the team, Ethan said coldly. Wes Sterling let out a short laugh. Already on it, Ethan. Dealing with these punks is going to be a walk in the park. As the first wave of Empire Group thugs reached them, the Drake brothers went to work. They were a blur of lethal efficiency. Duke used one man as a human shield, delivering 2 quick stabs to the kidneys before throwing the body into the next attacker. Dan was a whirlwind, taking down 3 men in the blink of an eye. The thugs faltered. These weren't bodyguards. They were butchers. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the front gate. A black SUV smashed through the entrance, followed by a team of men in tactical gear and combat gloves. They surged into the courtyard like a black tide. Reinforcements are here, Wes shouted, diving into the fray. These were Westford security, professionals trained by Wes himself. Within seconds, the ambush turned into a rout. The Empire Group thugs had no discipline, no training. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. In less than 2 minutes, the courtyard was littered with bodies and groaning men. A dozen others were on their knees with their hands behind their heads. The rest had vanished into the night. You okay, Ethan? Duke asked, wiping a smear of blood off his face. I'm fine. Good work. Let's head out. Ethan turned to the shell-shocked Harmons. Arthur, it's over. Let's go. I'll give you a ride. Arthur Harmon could only nod, his respect for Ethan now bordering on awe. This wasn't just a businessman. This was a man with a private army that functioned like a Tier 1 military unit. Outside the club, a line of black sedans and 2 transport vans waited. Dozens of security personnel stood at attention. Mr. Ford, they shouted in unison. Back to the hotel, Ethan ordered. As the motorcade pulled away, Duke looked at Ethan. Charles tried to kill us. We're just letting that go. Ethan's voice was like ice. Not a chance. Notify our contacts at the precinct. Send over the files we've been building. Paul Bennett and Mark Wells didn't die for nothing. He continued, his plan unfolding with ruthless precision. Have Big Ed take some men to the docks. I want every Empire Group shipment frozen for a week. Tell Ross Lawton to file the lawsuits immediately. Breach of contract, failure to deliver, the works. We're going to bleed them dry with penalties. And then, Ethan added, tell the other 3 families that Charles Thorpe is finished. Duke grinned. Charles thought killing Paul and Mark would intimidate us. He has no idea, he just handed us the rope to hang him with. Ethan leaned back. Success makes people arrogant. Arrogance makes them sloppy. From tonight on, the Empire Group is history. Back at the club sunroom. Mr. Thorpe. Mr. Thorpe. Warren came running in, breathless. What is it? Did they get him? Charles asked, sipping his tea. Worse. Ford's people wiped us out. Warren's face was ash gray. What? Charles stood up, stunned. They had a tactical team. We didn't stand a chance. They're at the front gate now. They're coming for us. We have to leave. Charles's face turned the color of a bruised plum. Useless trash, but he knew when to run. He led his entourage toward the back exit. Warren scrambled to throw open the rear doors, but the moment the doors swung wide, he was blinded by the flash of police sirens. Charles froze. A flood of officers surged in, weapons drawn. Detective Zimmer stepped forward, his eyes hard. Charles Thorpe, we have a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of first-degree murder. You're coming with us. Do you know who I am? Charles roared, panic finally setting in. You can't touch me. I am Shadow Thorpe. Detective Zimmer didn't blink. That's exactly why we're here. Take him. The next morning, a bombshell rocked New York City. Empire Group Chairman Charles Thorpe arrested for murder. The headlines were everywhere. On every street corner, people were huddled over newspapers, whispering. Can you believe it? Thorpe? The big man himself. You think a guy like that builds a billion-dollar empire with clean hands? Serve him right. I heard the Empire Group stock is in free fall. They're going to have to liquidate everything just to pay the creditors. Yeah, when the king is in power, everyone wants to be his friend. Now that he's in a cell, those same friends are going to pick his bones clean. Near a newsstand, A man held a newspaper so tightly his knuckles were white. "Sir, are you buying that or what?" "Pay up," the vendor barked. Matt Thorne pulled out some change, slapped it on the counter, and walked away with a dark, hollow expression. He climbed into the car, where Finn was waiting. "Finn, take me back to the hotel," Matt said, his voice trembling. "Matt, aren't we going to Empire Group HQ?" Finn asked. Matt looked at the paper. "No point. It's over. I think I need to go back home tonight." "So soon?" Finn was surprised. "You don't want to stay a few more days?" Matt shook his head, his eyes full of defeat. "Everything is finished." Half an hour later, the car pulled up at the St. Regis. Matt got out and waved Finn away. "Thanks for everything, Finn. I'll call you." "You better, Matt. Don't be a stranger," Finn shouted as he drove off. Matt watched the car disappear, a faint, genuine smile on his face. At least he still had one real friend. He thought of his old partner, Zach Bell, and his smile faded into a bitter grimace. As he turned toward the hotel entrance, a group of men in black suits blocked his path. Matt looked up, and his heart skipped a beat. He recognized the man in front. "Duke Drake." "Mr. Thorne, you didn't think you could leave New York without saying goodbye, did you?" Duke grinned. What do you want?" Matt asked, his pulse racing. "Ethan wants a word. You owe us an explanation. If Warren hadn't talked, we wouldn't have even known you were in town." Warren talked. Matt's face went pale. He knew it. The moment Charles Thorpe fell, everyone would turn on each other to save their own skin. Duke sneered. "Charles Thorpe only cares about profit. Did you really think his people would die for him? Ethan always says, business built on greed falls apart the moment the money stops." Matt backed away. "I'm not going with you." Duke stepped forward and gripped Matt's shoulder. "That isn't a choice you get to make." Two men grabbed Matt by the arms and hauled him toward a waiting car. The Jersey Shore, near an old pier. The area was quiet, shielded by the dunes of a nearby golf course. A line of black sedans pulled up. Matt was pulled from the car by Duke. "Let go of me." Matt struggled, but Duke just shoved him forward. A Mercedes door opened. Ethan Ford stepped out, his white shirt glowing in the sea breeze, a calm smile on his handsome face. "Ethan," Matt spat, his voice thick with a decade of resentment. Every memory of their rivalry flashed through Matt's mind. The first time he'd met Ethan, he'd seen a genius. He thought Ethan would be an asset to Arctic Systems. He never expected Ethan to be the one to dismantle him. "Matt, long time no see," Ethan said, walking closer. "Why aren't you dead?" Matt hissed. Ethan tucked his hands into his pockets. "You're disappointed. You thought Charles Thorpe could handle me." Matt gave a wretched laugh. "Yeah, I overestimated him, and I underestimated you. You win, Ethan. What now? You want to laugh at me? See how far your rival has fallen." Ethan looked at him for a long moment, then let out a soft laugh. "Rival." "Matt, in my mind, you were never even on the board. You're overthinking things." Matt's face turned a deep, angry purple. "Ethan, you son of a bitch." To Matt, there was no greater insult. To realize he wasn't even considered an enemy, just an obstacle Ethan had bypassed without a second thought, was more painful than the loss of his company. Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "I'm only here to confirm one thing. It was Danny who sold out Westford, wasn't it?" Matt's expression flickered, but he stayed silent. Ethan patted his shoulder. "You don't have to say it. I already know. I just wanted to see it in your eyes. He's going to pay for what he did because of you. He'll never work in this industry again. And you have to pay the price too. You chose to play this game, Matt. You have to live with the loss." Ethan turned to walk back to his car. "Ethan, I won't give you the satisfaction. I won't live in your shadow." Matt screamed, hysterical. He realized now that he would never have another chance. He would spend the rest of his life under Ethan's heel, a footnote in Ethan Ford's biography. He couldn't do it. With his eyes bloodshot and chest heaving, Matt Thorne suddenly turned, vaulted over the pier railing, and plunged into the dark, churning Atlantic waters. Inside the car, Ethan watched the splash with an expressionless face. Duke walked over. "Ethan, should we call it in?" Ethan took out a cigarette, lit it, and exhaled a heavy cloud of smoke. "Let's go home. We're going back to Chicago." 1 week later, Chicago. Natalie Young arrived at the station early. She dropped her bag at her desk and slumped into her chair, rubbing the dark circles under her eyes. "What's wrong, Nat? Rough night? Want a coffee?" Well, Grant asked, leaning over. "Make it double. I'm dying over here." Natalie groaned. She opened her laptop and looked at the mountain of headlines she had to edit. Top 10 young entrepreneurs. Ethan Ford of West Ford Group nominated West Ford Capital successfully acquires Emerald Bay Finance. West Ford Group secures multi-billion-dollar funding from Summit Capital. West Ford Semiconductor Group established. Federal support imminent. Every major story was about the West Ford ecosystem. The station manager had dumped the entire project on her shoulders, and she had been working around the clock. Nat, take it easy. Drink your coffee, Will said, handing her a mug. Natalie rolled her eyes. This news is time-sensitive. I can't take it easy. Will sat down. Well, you're the only one in the department who can actually get Ethan Ford on the phone. Of course they gave it to you. Natalie sighed. I guess. I need to call their PR office and see if I can book Ethan for an exclusive sit-down. She dialed the number. A PR specialist picked up. Hello, this is Natalie Young from the station. We'd like to arrange an interview with Chairman Ford. Oh, Natalie. Sorry, Mr. Ford has stepped back for the month. Tang Turner is the acting CEO right now. Ethan said he's taking a month off and won't be taking any interviews. Taking a month off? Natalie was stunned. Meanwhile, at Illinois Tech, the summer heat was brutal. Students were returning to campus for the new semester, the walkways crowded with people lugging suitcases. Near the campus convenience store, a girl in a sailor-style outfit was eating a rocket pop, looking around expectantly. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. She waved frantically. Ethan, over here. Her shout made dozens of students turn their heads. The guys were instantly captivated by her. Fair skin, perfect features, and a fresh, radiant aura. Whoa, is that the campus queen, Grace Miller? She's gorgeous. I heard she's taken, though. You kidding? Everyone knows she's with Ethan Ford, the guy who owns half the tech sector. In the middle of the murmurs, Ethan Ford appeared. He looked sharp, carrying an effortless air of authority, even in a simple white shirt. Hey, Gracie. Sorry I'm late. Grace ran over and immediately pinched his ear. You jerk. You're keeping me waiting on our date? You think you're a big shot now. Ethan winced. Ow. Grace, come on, let go. It wasn't my fault. There was traffic. Grace glared at him. Traffic? What were you driving? A 1980s rust bucket. Don't lie to me. My IQ is 140. Right. High IQ, Grace. Can we just talk about this? Let go. No. I'll buy you a rocket pop. 2 rocket pops. Phoenix. She let go. Ethan rubbed his ear, grinning. So, Gracie, what are we doing tonight? Grace's face turned bright red. She knew exactly what that look meant. What is wrong with you? Pervert. She poked his forehead. Ethan laughed. Hey, I'm innocent. I didn't even say anything yet. How do you know what I'm thinking? Grace rolled her eyes. I've known you since we were 5. I know every thought in that head. And tonight, the answer is no. I am hungry. I want spicy noodles. I thought you hated spicy noodles? Ethan asked, surprised. Grace hooked her arm through his. I don't know why, but lately I've been craving sour and spicy things. If it isn't sour, I can't even eat. Come on, take me. All right, let's go. Ethan patted her head. Grace giggled, but after a few steps, she suddenly felt the world tilt. Ethan, wait. I feel dizzy. She grabbed his arm, suddenly nauseous. She leaned over, dry heaving. Ethan held her tight. Is it the heat? Or maybe the rocket pop was too cold. Let's get you to the campus clinic. In the clinic, a middle-aged female doctor was examining Grace. Tell me the symptoms again, the doctor said, pressing on Grace's stomach. I feel bloated, a little dizzy, and nauseous. Do I have a stomach bug? Grace asked with wide, innocent eyes. The doctor paused, then reached for Grace's wrist to check her pulse. After a moment, a strange, knowing look crossed her face. So, you have a boyfriend, right? Grace blinked, blushing. She nodded. The doctor smiled. Honey, this isn't a stomach bug. Congratulations. You're expecting. The words hit Grace like a thunderbolt. She sat there, frozen. What? I'm what? The doctor chuckled. You kids. Never careful. But I get it. Young love. If you don't believe me, take this test. I guarantee you'll see 2 lines. The doctor handed her a pregnancy test. Go ahead. See for yourself. Grace snapped out of it, took the test, and her face turned the color of a ripe apple. She practically ran into the bathroom. 3 minutes later, a scream echoed through the clinic. Grace stumbled out, her face flushed, her fingers trembling as she held the stick. Her expression was a chaotic mix of disbelief, excitement, and panic. The doctor leaned back. Scared you, didn't it? It's just a baby, honey. No need for the theatrics. Make sure you get a proper checkup at the hospital soon. Grace took a deep breath. Right. Thank you, doctor. She walked out of the clinic. Ethan was waiting by the door. Gracie? What was that scream? Is everything okay? Grace glared at him, though her eyes were shining. I'll give you a scream. Ethan scratched his head. What happened? Grace burst into a laugh, threw her arms around him, and whispered in his ear. Ethan Ford, you're going to be a father. Ethan felt like a bomb had gone off in his head. He stood there, paralyzed, then grabbed Grace by the shoulders. What? What did you say? Seriously? Look, she showed him the test. 2 lines. Holy, I'm a dad. Ethan picked Grace up and spun her around in the hallway. He started laughing. Then his eyes actually welled up. Hey, put me down. You'll make the baby dizzy. Grace laughed. Ethan set her down, wiping a stray tear. Grace looked at him, her own heart aching with sweetness. Ethan, you're actually crying? You big baby. Ethan grinned. I'm just happy. This was it. The real deal. All those late nights had finally paid off. Ethan pulled Grace into a deep hug. Gracie, let's get married. Grace smiled, her heart full. Okay. 1 week later, early morning. A crowd had gathered around a newsstand. Natalie Young squeezed through, dropped 50 cents, and grabbed a copy of the Chicago Daily. The headline was massive. Special edition. West Ford Chairman Ethan Ford weds longtime sweetheart. There was a photo of them. Ethan in a sharp tuxedo looking every bit the tech mogul, and Grace in a white gown looking like an angel. Natalie's jaw dropped. My God, it's real. There goes my exclusive. She pushed through the crowd, her mind racing. She needed to get to the scene. As she ran, she accidentally bumped into a girl standing by the curb. Oh, sorry. My bad. Natalie apologized. The girl, who had short hair and a dazed expression, just whispered, It's okay. Natalie hurried off. The girl, Lucy Yates, stared at the newspaper in her hands, a flicker of pain in her eyes. Lucy? What are you doing standing there? Lily Chow popped up behind her. Lucy gave a forced smile. Nothing. Lily looked at the paper. Oh, giving up on that one? I told you missed your window. Don't worry. I've got someone new for you tonight. There's this guy at the club, Sean. He's rich, he's handsome, and he really wants to meet you. You're coming, right? Lucy hesitated, then nodded. Sure. Why not? Lily grinned. That's the spirit. Let's find a husband with a fat bank account. Love comes second. Cash comes first. Come on. Let's go find you something sexy to wear. We're going to blow his mind. The Ford Villa at Emerald Point. Reporters were swarming the gates, cameras flashing incessantly. But the gates stayed shut, guarded by a dozen men in black suits. A black Audi pulled up. The security team pushed the reporters back to let it through. That looks like Tank Turner. Get the shot. Tank got out of the car inside the estate. The courtyard was already filled with the city's elite. Tank didn't want to deal with the small talk. He headed straight into the villa, with Chloe Jones following him. They reached a back room, where Ethan was getting his makeup touched up. Henry Payne and Valerie Vane were nearby, blowing up balloons. Tank, you're here, Henry said, grinning. You look sharp, Henry, Tank said. Tank looked at Ethan. Wow, Ethan, you actually look more handsome than me today. I'll give you this one day. Ethan laughed. Wait until I'm done. Then we'll take the photos. A few minutes later, Ethan stood up and straightened his lapels. All right, time to see my wife. Ethan led the group to Grace's room. He knocked softly. The door opened, and there she was, Grace, in a stunning white dress, framed by the morning sunlight. She looked radiant. Hey, Ethan, she smiled. Ethan pinched her nose. Time to change that. What do you call me now? Grace's face turned red. Whatever. Husband. Ethan took her hands. Gracie, did you write in your diary today? Grace was surprised. How did you know? Can I see it? Grace pouted. Fina, but just this once. She led him to her desk and pulled out a yellow diary. Ethan opened it, reading the familiar handwriting. His eyes filled with tears again. Grace looked at him, confused. Why do you always want to read that? It's embarrassing. Ethan closed the book. I just wanted to see if you were still talking trash about me. Grace snatched it back. I wasn't. Mostly. Ethan laughed loudly. It's okay. You're my wife now. You can write whatever you want for the next 50 years. He wiped his eyes. It wasn't a dream. This life with Grace. No more regrets. Ethan, don't cry on your wedding day. Grace said, kissing the tears away. Ethan hugged her tight and looked at his friends. Tank, Henry, Chloe, Valerie. Hey guys, get in here. Let's get a photo. Ethan and Grace stood in the center, fingers interlaced. Tank and Chloe on one side, Henry and Valerie on the other. The photographer stepped forward. Everyone look at the camera. Say cheese. Cheese. Flash. Bonus 1. Before 2000. March 11th, 1998. Overcast. Ethan Ford is a jerk. He actually let the air out of my bike tires today. I'm going to draw a poop on his backpack. That evening, Grace was hunched over her desk, furiously recording Ethan's crimes. When she finished, she was still fuming, her cheeks puffed out as she bit her pen, trying to think of a better revenge. Ethan, you just wait. A knock came at the door. Gracie, doing your homework? Her mother, Lily Miller, asked. Grace hid the diary. Not yet. Why? Does your brilliant daughter need to help with something? Lily poked her forehead. Don't get cocky. Your Uncle Frank got a bonus at the mill today, Employee of the Month. They invited us over for dinner. Grace's eyes lit up. Great. Let's go. Perfect. Here's my chance. Ethan, you're dead meat. When they arrived at the Fords, Grace scanned a room. No Ethan. She poked her head into the kitchen. Aunt Mary, where's the boy? In his room. He's been in there since he got home. Mary Ford smiled. I made your favorite sweet and sour ribs, Gracie. Eat up tonight. Thanks, Auntie. I'm going to go. Play with Ethan. Grace skipped toward his room. Mary watched her go with a fond smile. Those two, they're inseparable. Grace reached the door and moved like a ninja, slowly turning the handle. The room was dark, lit only by a desk lamp. Ethan was hunched over his desk, his right hand moving frantically up and down under the table. He was panting slightly. What is he doing? Grace snuck in, held her breath, and lunged. What are you doing, jerk? Holy, you scared the hell out of me. Ethan jumped, and something clattered to the floor. What was that? Grace leaned down to pick it up. Ethan beat her to it, clutching it to his chest. Nothing. It's nothing. Grace squinted with suspicion. Uh-huh. Is it something gross? Something you're not supposed to have. Just look okay. Under Grace's merciful gaze, Ethan surrendered. He showed her a strange wood carving. He'd been trying to fit a support peg into the base. Is it a toy? An elephant? A tiger? Ethan snatched it back. It's a project. I can't get this peg in. It's too tight. I tried like 10 times. Is my technique wrong? Grace looked at it, grabbed the piece, and slammed it against the desk. The peg slid in perfectly. Was that so hard? Ethan. Gracie, can we try being a little less violent? Grace grinned and tossed the wood back to him. Sometimes violence is the only answer. Got a problem? Ethan laughed awkwardly. No problem. Grace saw some paint on the desk. What's the paint for? To color it, Ethan said without looking up. Grace's eyes narrowed into a mischievous smile. I'm an artist. Let me help. She sat on the bed and opened the jars. Hey, Ethan, about my bike tires today. Was that you? Ethan's eyes darted around. No. Let me explain. I don't know anything about that. Grace saw the guilt written all over his face. Keep lying. See where it gets you. She smiled kindly and patted his shoulder. It's okay. It's a small thing. Do I look mad? I'm not mad at all. Really? I've let the air out of yours before, right? Ethan, wait, that was you? Grace realized she'd slipped. No, you misheard. I said I've never been mad at you. Ethan felt a chill, but went back to his carving. Grace started opening the paint jars, getting the colors all over her palms, especially the black. Oh, Ethan, you have something on your nose. Hey, is that a zit? Let me see. Wait, are you sick? Your forehead feels hot. Let me check. Wow, Ethan, your jawline is so defined. When did that happen? Ethan sat there confused as Grace smeared her hands all over his face. Grace, what are you doing? Fine, I admit it. I let the air out of your tires. Just stop touching me. I only did it because... Ethan stopped. Because what? I heard you were going to go buy workbooks with that loser Luke from the other class. He's a scumbag, Ethan said seriously. Grace burst into laughter. Who told you that? Luke was bothering me, so I kicked him. I wasn't going anywhere with him. Ethan coughed. Oh, Chloe told me. Grace facepalmed. You listened to her? She's a gossip mill. Anyway, I'm not mad. Truly. Grace let go, admiring her masterpiece. Ethan's face looked like a calico cat. He was still oblivious. What? Why are you looking at me like that? Am I that handsome? Ethan asked, touching his face. Grace nodded solemnly. Yeah, you're stunning. Better than the Backstreet Boys. Ethan, really? Grace stifled a laugh and went to wash her hands. Wait, Grace, Ethan called out. What? Stay here a second. I'm almost done. Just gotta put the sticker on. There. Ethan turned around, smiling. This is actually for you. A little gift. You said you wanted that Sailor Moon poster, right? I couldn't find the poster, but I found these stickers. I thought the stickers looked boring, so I built this little mountain scene out of wood for them. You like it? Ethan showed her the carving. It was a beautiful little rocky landscape with a Sailor Moon sticker perfectly placed in the center. Grace covered her mouth. For me? Yeah, we're friends, right? Why are you looking at me like that? Grace's face turned red. Who's friend with you? But her heart was hammering against her ribs. She'd only mentioned the poster once. She couldn't believe he'd remembered. So, you don't like it? Ethan asked nervously. I love it. I love it so much. Grace grabbed the toy, her heart overflowing with sweetness. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. Good. I thought girls might find it lame. I guess I didn't mess up. Then I can probably give one to Sarah from the other class too, right? She'd probably like one. Grace. Ethan Ford. You're dead. Roundhouse kick. Ow. That hurts. Bonus 2. Before 2000. Ethan, can we just be normal for 5 minutes? We are being normal. Normal people don't have their foot on their friend's chest. Oh, right. My bad. Ethan was lying on the bed, wincing under the weight of Grace's foot. She finally moved it. So, when did you and Sarah start appreciating each other? Ethan sat up. It's called mutual respect, Grace. She's smart, cute, and gentle. Grace squatted in front of him, cupping her face and blinking her eyes sweetly. Cuter than me? Gentler than me? Ethan felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Are those words even in your vocabulary? Thud. Ethan was kicked off the bed. Grace cracked her knuckles. Ethan, your mouth is just too sweet today. Ethan scrambled up. Grace, stop. Violence is never the answer. The Bible says so. Grace smiled. Does it? I'll send you to confirm that with a big eye, personally. The door opened. Mary Ford walked in. What are you two doing? Dinner's ready. Ethan, what is on your face? Why did you draw on yourself, honey? Ethan froze. He ran to the mirror. His face was a mess of colored paint. Grace. Grace was already out the door. Wasn't me. Bye. Late that night, downstairs. Grace wrapped her coat tighter and looked for Ethan. She found him lying on the stone ping-pong table. Hey, jerk. Are you hiding? Still mad? Ethan huffed and turned his head away. Oh, poor little baby, Grace teased. She climbed up and lay down beside him, staring at the stars. So, you really want a girlfriend? Aren't you afraid your dad will give you the belt? Ethan looked at her. You didn't snitch, did you? Grace rolled her eyes. Am I a snitch? Ethan nodded. Yes. Grace. Fine. I won't snitch. But honestly, what's so great about a girlfriend? It's not like it helps your SAT score. Focus on your studies. Ethan looked at her suddenly. Do you like me? Grace's face turned bright red. W, what are you talking about? Who likes you? Ethan grunted. Then why do you nag me so much? You're like my second mother. Grace snapped back. I'm being a good friend. I turn down guys all the time because I'm focused on the future of this country. Ethan laughed. Please, if guys knew the real you, the tiger of the mill, no one would date you. You'll be lucky if you can find a guy to marry into your family. Grace got angry. Is that a curse? Fine. If I can't find anyone else, I'll just marry you. Ethan's eyes went wide. What? You want to bully me for the rest of my life? No way. Have mercy. Grace laughed at his terror. She grabbed his collar. Don't forget, when we were kids, you ate my candy and promised to marry me. A man keeps his word. Ethan struggled. That doesn't count. Grace flipped over and pinned him to the table. They were inches apart, feeling each other's breath. Ethan looked terrified. W, what are you doing? It's a public place. Don't harass an innocent man. Grace's eyes crinkled into sweet crescents. You said it doesn't count, but I'm taking it seriously. Bonus 3, after 2005. Ethan, you lazy bum, get up. Wake up. No. I am tired. My back hurts. Grace blushed. That's your own fault. Ethan looked at her. She was wearing pink dinosaur pajamas, looking as cute as ever. He smiled. Actually, it's half your fault. You're too distracting. I can't help myself. You're blaming me? I'll show you distracting. Grace jumped on the bed and started tickling him. Ha. Stop. Grace. Ethan grabbed her hands, flipped her over, and pinned her down. Oh, you want to play? Fine. Ethan smirked, looking at her. Grace's face was red, but she looked up at him with watery eyes, challenging him. Go ahead. Do your worst. Ethan leaned in. Fine. Time for some discipline. He kissed her deeply. Dad? Mom? What are you doing? A tiny voice broke the moment. They both froze and turned toward the edge of the bed. Ethan. Omega Grace. Hamoyelasti fatsula puklini tomati. A little boy was standing there, holding the hand of a toddler. Both were staring with wide, confused eyes. Wah, Mommy and Daddy are fighting. The 2-year-old started crying. Oh, Sean, don't cry. We aren't fighting. Ethan scrambled out of bed and scooped up the toddler. They were probably practicing yoga, the older boy, Liam, said, rubbing his chin like a tiny philosopher. Yes, exactly. Liam is so smart. We were just exercising. Grace straightened her pajamas and pinched Liam's cheek. Okay, go get breakfast, sweeties. In the dining room. Ethan managed to calm Sean down and put him in his high chair. Sean pouted and reached out. Dada, hold me. Ethan smiled and picked him up. Fine, I'll hold you while you eat. 4-year-old Liam was using his chopsticks with terrifying elegance, eating his oatmeal without making a mess. Grace looked at him with a surge of maternal pride. Liam is such a good boy. Want Mommy to hold you too? Grace looked at him with a surge of maternal pride. No, holding makes it harder to reach the dishes. My arm length is currently shorter than the table's radius, Liam said coolly. Grace. This kid is too smart for his own good. After breakfast, Let's all go to the amusement park. Grace suggested. Sure. The Westford theme park just opened. We should check it out, Ethan agreed. Sean didn't understand, but he clapped his hands because everyone else was happy. Liam wiped his mouth with a napkin. You guys go. I have writing lessons at 9, etiquette at 10, and golf at 11. I have a gap from 4 to 5 p.m. if you'd like to schedule an appointment. Ethan. Grace. Who signed you up for all that? Your grandpa. Ethan asked, exasperated. And grandma, Liam added. Grace sighed. Do you even want to go? You can tell us if you don't. Liam climbed down and straightened his tiny shirt. I want to. It sounds challenging. I like challenges. It's time to go. Grandpa is waiting. Ethan, is that really a 4-year-old talking? Grace patted his head. As long as you're happy. Go on. Ethan watched him go. Is the first kid supposed to level up on his own like that? I think so. Grace wasn't sure. Ethan looked at Sean.